This is the equipment that you need to tune your bow. Having a well-tuned bow is critical to ensure that the kinetic energy that is generated in the bow transfers to the arrow and stays in the arrow throughout the flight path until it hits its target. What I have here is my bow. I have my arrow with a practice tip. This is not a sharp tip at all, but it does have a hunting tip to it. And I have a stringer. It just makes my job easier for fine-tuning the string. I have my knock pliers, so I can squeeze on, and this little thing will fit into that gap right there and open that up if I need to move it. And the bow square. So this bow square has a scale on it in inches. It's an imperial system where this will clamp on, these clamps here clamp onto the string, and this will tell you your knock height. So and it goes in 1/16 of an inch increments, up to an inch on top and 3/4 of an inch to the bottom. This equipment, I'm able to tune the bow. You will notice that on my bow there are silencers, and you want to tune your bow with the equipment on the bow that you're going to have. So right now it's silencers for me. I'm going to try this year without a bow quiver. I might change my mind because bow quivers are just so convenient and dampen the bow. So these silencers are designed to dampen the vibration after your release. So having a tuned bow is critical for arrow flight and penetration. You want your arrow to be true in its flight and retain the kinetic energy that's transferred from the bow into the arrow. One of the ways that you tune your bow is to adjust your string to make this string shorter or longer. By making it longer, you're lessening the brace height because these 2 points are falling away from each other. When you make the string shorter by twisting the string, it brings those points in and it increases the brace height. Let me show you how to do that. So this is a stringer. Has a pocket and a flat area that rests on your limb for friction and grips. You stick the bottom end of your bow into the pocket provided there on the string side of the bow. You take this and slide your bow into there and just rest it right on the limb, just like that. Okay? So I have this bowstring or this bow tuned already. But if you spread your feet apart on this stringer, you can just simply lift up on this bow, and you can see the string goes slack. If I wanted to increase my brace height so that this string is further away from my riser, I would tighten this string by removing it like so and tightening it. So I can tighten it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns or whatever, and that would increase your brace height. If I want to loosen it, again, you just lift up on your, or loosen the string, remove the eye and loosen that back. And you can see that this string is a twisted Flemish string. You can see the twist here. I hope you can pick that up. And that twist, if you tighten the twist, it will increase your brace height. So when you tighten this string by twisting it tighter, it brings the ends in, which ultimately holds the limbs in, pushes that out, and that'll increase the brace height, which is the distance between your riser and your string. You're not. If I want to loosen, if I want to lower the brace height to bring this string closer to the riser, I would loosen this string off so I can adjust it in that way. So in order to tune your bow, you need to have a consistent release. And so develop your shot sequence, and a sequence that you can duplicate every single time you shoot your bow. It takes a lot of practice, but don't let that deter you from playing around with your bow and developing a really solid understanding of how to use all of this, how it works, and get your arrow flying in its truest path possible. If your arrow is fishtailing, so you have the bird's eye view, if the arrow is fishtailing like this, that indicates that the arrow is either leaving the string too late or too early, which means you will have to adjust your brace height. That's adjusting this. If your arrow is porpoising like that, that indicates that your knock point is too high or too low, and that will have to be adjusted. That's where this wrench comes in and this bow square. So let me just roll this over just like that. The bow square clips onto your string just like that, and then you lower the bow square to where it's just resting on your riser where your arrow sits. If you go too far, you can see that it's too tight and it comes off canter, so you're not going to get a true reading. So you just take that, there it is. So it has free movement, and if you look, you can see there, it's about 1/2 inch to the bottom of my nock. If I take my pliers and I want to measure that, I can just by doing that. It was just over 1/2 inch, so 17/32, 0.0 here on the rule. So that 0 correlates with the riser where my shelf is, where the arrow sits, and that's where my arrow is going to fly best. I've already tuned this bow, and I've been shooting it and just really trying to find that sweet spot. So I will, fine tune a twist on to increase the brace height. I might have to twist back off and lower the brace height. It depends on how much this string stretches. After you get your brace height, once you get good at arrow flight, you want to record these numbers. You can see here that my brace height is also measured along this scale. 6 5/16 is where that's at. Okay, and that is how that is done. So this is about 30 yards. You want to have at least 15 yards when you're tuning your bow, just so your arrow has a chance to go through its paradox and then correct itself and get into that path of travel. So I could see with my naked eye that was a pretty good path of travel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at it through the camera and just slow my frames right down so I can really get an idea of how true that arrow is flying, because now I'm in a place where I can fine tune my my bow. Your arrow is porpoising up and down like that. That's an indication that your brace height is either too high, too low. If it's fishtailing like that, that is an indication that your arrow is leaving the string too early or too late. Well, I'm pretty happy with the flight of that arrow. It can be fine-tuned, but I'm starting to get tired, so I'm just going to leave it for another day. I'm going to shoot this for a while. I have good arrow flight. It looks like a pretty nice tight group, but let's shoot for excellence and see where we go down the road. So little by little, right? Let's take a look at some of the adjustments and flight paths that the arrow took and how that changed the characteristics in the flight of the arrow. Now let's look at the arrow going through the archer's paradox. There's a shot in here where I pluck my string versus releasing, so that was my sequence of going through and increasing, lowering my brace height, increasing, lowering my knock point to get that arrow flight as true as possible. Now, keep in mind that this is an individual sport and we all shoot our own bows with our own styles and shot sequence. So my brace height, my knock point, those measurements aren't going to be the same for you as a individual shooter. When you buy a traditional bow, that traditional bow will have a recommended brace height and it'll be between this number and that number. So, and that's all it is a recommendation. Don't get hung up on those measurements because your brace height might be higher than the recommended or lower than the recommended. But again, going back, it's an individual sport and it's all dependent on your shot sequence, how you release, and other minute variables that really make a big difference in this sport. So practice, 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 research. It's a very simple concept and it's so intricately complicated at the same time. And things happen very, very quickly when you release that arrow, but everything that happens, though it's super quick, it still happens and it has an effect. So when you adjust, when you fine tune your bow and you adjust your brace height by half a turn one way or the other, or the knock point by 1/32 or of an inch, those things make a difference. And shoot for excellence. Just don't settle with good enough. They really try and strive for that. The other thing I want to mention is that there is a process of tuning your arrow as well, and that's a whole other video. So now that you have your bow tuned, we can look at ways to tune your arrow. Well, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate the time that you spent, and I hope you found it helpful. I know it's a long video, and I mean, there's times in this video where I am going, but it's important information. And if you want to shoot really well, it just takes practice. It's like anything, just practice, practice, practice. You know, practice being good, practice being safe, and practice being kind. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And when you do practice, practice correctly.